The GTX 1080 Ti was every PC gamer's fantasy card. Everyone wanted one. We've been lucky enough to get our hands on the ROG Strix 1080 Ti, but what we actually want to know is how does this card perform in 2024? Before we get going with the 1080 Ti, I just want to show you a quick size comparison, like an actual visual size comparison of the 1080 Ti compared to a more modern 3070 Ti. This is what they look like together. Now that's kind of how it would look, but you can kind of get the idea of the size difference. Obviously the different length of the PCB, you can see this one ends there on the 3070 and it's slightly, well actually it's huge, it goes right to the end of the GPU on the 1080 Ti. But that didn't stop them making the cooler on the 3070 Ti about the same size. These are the only two that I've seen that still do dual HDMI connectors on there. But I like to connect it to a larger TV, which we'll show you in a bit as well. So it's really, really, really helpful that they still have multiple HDMI ports. But for my preference, I love the graphics cards that have dual HDMI. Let's pop it in the machine and see how it goes. So the system we're using to test the 1080 Ti today is a Ryzen 7 5800X, a great value CPU, around 180 UK pounds in today's market. You might find it a little bit less if you're buying secondhand, but for most people, the 5800X is going to be just fine. We've also got 48 gig of Crucial Ballistics Max RAM. So the first game we're going to be showing you is Death Stranding. Now this is one that I've been recently streaming over on Twitch. So if you haven't already followed me over there, go and watch me on Twitch. I stream fairly regularly. I'm trying to get back into streaming now, but this is the game that I'm currently playing on Twitch. But this is the game we're also going to be starting with on today's video. Okay, so here we are in Death Stranding, and as you can see, it's a huge open world game. Now, hopefully the frames per second translates. Obviously, we're getting higher than 60 FPS, which this video is recorded in. This is at 1440p, and as we pan around, we're not moving very quickly at the minute, it looks amazing. Just under 5 gig of RAM available, used on the GPU, and we are maxed out on the megahertz there. And we are, 98% on the GPU usage right now, and only at 69 degrees C. These things do actually run really, really cool. Now, we will try this in 4K. I don't know really what to expect at 4K, but we're going to try it in 4K, so let's go and do that now. Okay, so as promised, we're now showing 4K footage of Death Stranding, and you can see, well, you may not see because it's quite small now, but on the screen capture you'll see it, so let's show that now. So you can see there that we're getting under 50 FPS average frame rate there, and our GPU utilization is whacked up to a full 99%. As you can see, as Will is walking around, even at 50 or nearly 60 FPS we're at now, if you just pan around a bit, Will, you can see that it's still really, really smooth. It looks amazing at 4K. It's pretty cool. I'm really impressed that this card can still do, or even indeed do 4K, because when this card came out, 4K was that unreachable target that you really wanted to try and get that nice crisp graphics on screen. Gameplay wise, I could play this at 4K all day. Okay, moving on to Shadow of the Tomb Raider now. As you can see, at 4K, it's really pushing it with this game. We're getting 5 FPS, maxed out 100% on the GPU. CPU is literally sat there going, well, what are we doing? We doing something today or what? And then the GPU is actually using almost all of its RAM, 10.6 gig of its available RAM. Okay, so we've enabled Fidelity Effects Super Resolution, and it made literally no difference whatsoever. So what we've actually gone and done is reduce the settings, the general settings down to high now. We're in the high preset on the default in-game graphical settings there, and it's made a huge difference. We're now back up to our above 50 FPS there, and it's running really, really well. It looks super sharp as well with that Fidelity Effects enabled. So as you can see there, we've changed the preset graphic settings to the highest available now. Now we're going to turn motion blur off because we always turn motion blur off, so now that it will show as custom. But if we go back into the game now, you can see that we've dropped about 10 FPS, I reckon, in this particular area here. Now we're just walking around and not really doing much. The game is completed, so there's not really much to do in this, but we can still walk around. I think it's okay at this frame rate. I probably would prefer it at a higher frame rate, so I may want to knock it down. I can't really see much difference between this other than the frame rate, you know, graphically than the high setting that we were just on. That being said, I think it looks stunning in this particular area anyway. Lots of stuff going on around you. I think it looks amazing, and we're getting just under 50 FPS. I would definitely have this game at 4K on high all day long, no problem. Really impressed, actually. We're moving on to something that we haven't really looked at before. It's something that Will likes to play, so we're going to just try it on the GTX 1080 Ti. It's Kerbal Space Program, and well, we're just going to see how it looks in 4K. Okay, so loading in, we have the SLS rocket there with its side boosters, and it's orange because NASA likes orange. I don't know why. Heat shield or something or other. Looking around the Kerbal Space Center there, as you can see, we can just move that around there. Yeah, there we go. We're getting about high 40s, mid 50s there. So let's get this thing up in the air and see what it's like. Here we go, looking down at the launch pad. We've got the launch pad fading away into the distance as we're increasing our speed and our altitude. Although actually in this one, I've just noticed the power usage is going up to about, I saw 108% on the power usage there. If you can look down a minute, Will, we'll just see if that is what's causing that to increase in power. No, it's actually gone down. So we're currently 82, 85. It's going up so quick, I can't keep up with it. 90,000 meters high there. There we go, 150,000 meters, now 160,000. Now that's how quick it goes up once it gets out into the atmosphere. Oh, okay, was that supposed to happen? They just literally, oh wow, look at them flip. They're flipping like crazy. I don't think you cut the engines first. The rocket is continuing its journey into space. We're up into the edge of the atmosphere now, nearly into space. Anyway, we're getting a stable 40 plus FPS in this game. As I said earlier, it's increasing in FPS as we're going higher, obviously, because there's less to load on the ground and there's less to show in space anyway. We're up into space now, I believe, or we're just verging on the edge of space there. So let's cut the engines. Okay, we're not going to cut the engines. We haven't quite reached apogee yet. I don't quite know what he's going for here. Oh. Okay, we've aborted the mission, everyone. We are going back down to the planet Kerbin. Let's just hope we survive. Let's have an inside view of how the Kerbins are doing. And they're having a whale of a time. Look at them go. I can't believe how amazing. They just find this super exciting. They're coming back down to Earth now. What's their altitude? 340,000 feet now as we're descending quite rapidly at 1,500 meters per second and slowing down now. They're a bit confused. They're not really sure what's going on right now. They're not really sure what's going on. I don't think I'm really sure what's going on in this game. But as you can see, as we're descending, or plummeting, I should say, back down to Earth, we're getting a nice 60, well, it's all over the place there, 30 FPS as we're looking at this town, and as we're coming down. This game's not known for high detail scenery on the ground. Don't forget, this isn't Flight Sim. This is Kerbal Space Program, and we might even land on someone's tree. 50 FPS and 10 gig of RAM with 99% utilization. Oh, look how slow we're going, 7.9 meters per second in a GTX 1080 Ti. Who'd have thought that you could fly a spaceship with a 1080 Ti? But apparently you can. There you go. Kerbal Space Program works a treat. Okay, here we are in Battlefield 5 now. Now, I know this is an older game. We're not using Battlefield 2142 because, quite honestly, we just don't like it. So we're doing Battlefield 5 because it's quite a cool game. And it's got Wake Island on it, of course. But anyway, we're in the battle and we're getting 40, low 40s there at 4K set to high. So in a game like this, you really want high FPS so you can get accurate shots. We went down to about 36 there in the FPS, average FPS. So those 1% lows are probably much lower than that. Definitely want higher frame rates in this game. It's, yeah, he's about to get sniped. Zooming in like that, we're down to 23, low 20s there. Yeah, not very good frame rate. So we're gonna go in and change the settings down to the next setting down, which I guess is medium. So we are now down to the medium setting. As you saw, we just changed that. And to be honest with you, at 4K resolution, we're not really noticing much difference, to be honest, for me visually, than it was a moment ago, even though the frame rates are lower. Although we're getting nearly mid-50s there now. Yeah, so 50 FPS, we're getting there, 10% or thereabouts on the CPU on the Ryzen 5800X there, and pretty much maxed out on the GPU. Now, we could go lower on the settings, but there's not really much point. Obviously, the FPS is going to go up. Normally, it's about 10 FPS increments. But all that aside, I actually think that the 1080 Ti is coping with this game pretty well. That's Battlefield 5 with the GTX 1080 Ti. Well, there we go. That is a handful selection of games that we just chucked at the 1080 Ti. And I think even at 4K, it coped really, really well. 4K wasn't really initially the premise of this video, but it turned out that it just was fine. It was okay. It worked really well. And I'm really, really surprised that a 6-year-old card, a 1080 Ti, a 6-year-old 1080 Ti, has still got it today and can still pump out 4K resolution graphics. Not at high frame rates, but at acceptable, what I would consider acceptable. You guys may not consider it acceptable, and that's perfectly fine with 120 Hz monitors, 144 Hz monitors. You wanna push those FPS. I get it. But for those of us that have been in the gaming arena for a very long time, playing it on those kind of frame rates is actually fine. It's actually okay. There's nothing wrong with playing it with those frame rates. And I think I would have a whale of a time with this graphics card. If you liked this kind of content, then get subscribed, click that subscribe button, hit that like button and the notification button so you get notified when we release videos like this one. And if you want to see more content, then just watch more content because all our videos are really cool.